Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Miller.
And my name is Hazel Miller.
And we are the co-publishers at Book Hug Press. It is our great pleasure to welcome everyone here to the virtual launch of Iceland is Melting, and So Are You by Talya Rubin.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the land we are joining you from this evening has, for thousands of years, been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And today is still home to many diverse Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. If you are unsure of the history of the land under your feet, we highly recommend the online resource native-land.ca to learn more about the land you inhabit, the history of those lands, and how to actively be better part of a future going forward. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live, gather, work, and learn on this land. And we also acknowledge that many of you in the virtual audience are joining from other locations, and we encourage anyone who wishes to do so to please share an acknowledgement of where you are joining from via the chat function found at the bottom of your screen. Additionally, if you haven't already done so, please feel free to post a greeting for Talya in the chat.
We are delighted to be launching Talya's sophomore poetry collection, Iceland is Melting, and So Are You, with all of you tonight. This timely book explores the urgency of the climate emergency, offering recognition of and solve for the vast mysteries of the natural world, our human interior, and the relationship between the two. Writer Claire Caldwell writes, Iceland is Melting and So Are You takes readers into the right now of the climate crisis, where the daily thunder of collapse is deafening, yet too often ignored. Tonight, we also give thanks to the power of technology and the magic of Zoom events that have allowed us to all gather in this virtual space to celebrate with Talya her beautiful words. And gather we have. Talya is joining us from her home in Western Australia. And I'll note that for Talya, it's actually 9 a.m., I believe, on Thursday, November the 11th. And special guest Rufus Wainwright is joining us from Los Angeles. But we've all learned over the past 19 plus months of the pandemic, time is very strange and very weird.
Before we get underway, I just want to quickly go over a bit of housekeeping for tonight. First of all, live closed captions are available. And to access the captions, please click on the CC function that appears along the bottom of the screen and follow the prompts. Secondly, tonight's event is being recorded, and the recording will be made available for on-demand viewing via our YouTube channel in the coming days. And lastly, just a quick word about the format for tonight. Shortly, we'll invite Talya to join us here on screen to welcome all of you and to share a reading from the new book. And following that, Talya will introduce her childhood friend, special guest singer, songwriter, and composer Rufus Wainwright to join her in conversation about the book. The two will talk for about 25 minutes, and then Rufus will open things up to questions from you, our audience. So if you have a question for Talya, please submit it using the Q&A function, also found at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our very best to get to all the questions, but we apologize in advance if we don't have enough time to get to everyone.
If you haven't already purchased your copy of Iceland is Melting and So Are You, you may wish to order one or several directly from our website, bookhugpress.ca, or you can certainly order it from your independent bookstore. We'll drop a link to the book's product page on our website into the chat function throughout the event. And now, at last, it is our great pleasure to introduce the person we've all gathered together to fet tonight. Talya Rubin is a Canadian poet originally from Montreal. She was awarded the RBC Bronwyn Wallace Award for Emerging Writers from the Writers' Trust of Canada in 1998. Her poetry has been longlisted for the CBC Poetry Prize and the Montreal International Poetry Prize. In 2015, she won the Battle of the Bards and was invited to read from her work at the Toronto International Festival of Authors. Her first collection, Leaving the Island, was published in 2015. Talya holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of British Columbia. She also runs a theater company called Too Close to the Sun and currently lives in Perth, Australia with her husband and son. So please give a warm welcome to Talya. Over to you, Talya.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us here tonight, or as Jay mentioned, I am in the future in Australia. So for me, it's morning. I am joining you from the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people in a city called Boorloo, or Perth, Western Australia. I would like to acknowledge the ancestors and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I feel very fortunate to be living and working on this land. It's a biodiversity hotspot, and it's just a very beautiful place on Earth. I would really like to thank Jay and Hazel for making this book real and bringing it into the world. And Sandra Ridley, my fantastic editor, who did this deep dive with me into the poems and helped me to crack them open. I also would really like to thank Shannon Webb for her very diligent copy editing and the beautiful design by Tree Abraham. And I'm just going to jump right in and start reading from the book. The Snow Queen. What if a shard of tainted glass alighted in your eye and the world went white, a fouled lullaby, and the girl of your dreams turned out to be the Snow Queen, and you got caught in rose brambles trying to make things right, and one drop of blood began a litany of blood, and the rivers ran red, and the petals off peonies fell to land, weeping in defeat. And you called this a regular day on earth, because now the great undoing had begun, and desperate thieves failed to stuff diamonds back into the shifting ground. And the thunder of collapse was so deafening it overtook the traffic, like the crackle of bushfire ripping through pine plantations, screaming through ancient stands of forest. And the tumble of glaciers and ice flows went unnoticed, except their distant rumble was everywhere in our veins. And the highways that crisscrossed LA like snakes stood still, their twisted bodies a monument to a chrysanthemum's dead-headed gaze. And buses shuttled empty, their ghost passengers staring out ghost windows onto ghost streets at the world we made and unmade, made and unmade, until it made us, finally made us into who we are. Bleaching event. In the far north rainforest of Queensland, I saw the perfect penis. It belonged to a 22-year-old Frenchman. We had been haphazardly chasing each other up the east coast of Australia. I put my lips around it, a coral polyp forming a skeleton to protect from sting, then fell backward past the canvas tents on stilts into the underbrush where a cassowary was protecting a gigantic egg, staring at me with orange eyes, like orbs of precious metals not yet pillaged from the untouched ground. The coral were spawning that night, a once-a-year event. I would have invited you and your flowering grass tree, an insignificant but potent miracle, only I could not find words. I had swallowed bioluminescent bark, the kind you crack open and it starts glowing. Suddenly, my childhood was held in the palm of my hand with tiny figures watching there, toing and froing, tisk-tisking me back into rational thought. I grazed a knee on a coral, and could not tell who was more injured, he or I. But I bled and ached from the rough scratch of pearly bones. It's all disappearing, bleaching into white. I want to hold on to that wooden bench where I first knew you, a life raft, and scream until the sea turns silver, the spawning fallen stars. The Dictionary of Lost Words. In the back garden that belongs to moss, blackberry, and bluebell, the conquerors play conkers. They blog in a chat room, try and enter facts in a database, undo words from a children's dictionary, replace them with voicemail, erase the cry of a wren. Acorn hits earth with purpose. The catkin, a slim cylindrical flower cluster with inconspicuous petals, usually wind-pollinated, disperses into thin air. Chestnut is plucked for a game in the evergreen clover. Young minds trip over wire to gain ground, find words to stand on. Magpie, mussel, minnow, newt, otter, ox, oyster, panther, artifacts of long ago, stories we tell our young brood. Recollect when there was a field of blueberries to cut and paste, analog signals to surf on a broadband of regret. Recall when heron, herring, kingfisher, lark, leopard, lobster walked here, swam here, ran here, sang signals out of human time. Beloved, in this life, trees just once shine in their brilliance. The sky in the far north opens through cumulus thick with color, opaque with air. To breathe like this is to be afloat upon a floating world. The husky with diamond blue eyes cannot be explained, only witnessed as he lunges towards me, an omen, not of something dangerous, but a great belonging to the earth. This was no garden. This was no garden variety afternoon. A conjurer took out his hat and made the world vanish with rapid eye movement. A congress of bees met near the roses, ready to speak their truth, gangbuster into the human world, expose the cons. I had been led down the garden path simply by poor eyesight, my missing glasses the lead in a horticultural passion play. When all else is lost, I find myself face up in tall grasses, in an ad for fabric softener, hoping this is not the end, but a beginning, colossal as the hills that once pushed up from the ocean floor. And the last one I'm going to read is called Time Freeze. The icebergs have stopped melting with a deep gasp. The fires have stopped their ravaging tongues on ancient forests with an inhale. A dog scratches behind his ear forever. A fly midair cannot reach the rotting fruit it burns for with its bulging, pointillist eyes. I am longing for an end to the world the way it is. Heart stops beating between breaths, the sorrow bleeding out. We have pierced the center of the earth with our howls and our claws. A bear drinks honey, her tongue midair. A bee suspends over the eye of a marigold, stopped like a dream of beginning again. A wolf stalks his prey with a paw sinking into Siberian moss. Tail erect, ears pinned back, the scent of almost stuck to his nose. And I am staring into space with the gaze of a lover, torn in two, torn apart, frozen under ice, trapped behind glass like a woolly mammoth in a museum diorama, a relic to be gazed upon. What once was of all of us. Thank you for listening. I now have the great honor of introducing my very special guest who's going to be joining me to launch this book, Rufus Wainwright, who I don't think needs much of an introduction, but I'll go ahead anyway. Rufus is a really magnificent singer, songwriter, and composer. He's recorded 10 studio albums. Hopefully I've got that right, including his most recent one, Unfollow the Rules, which is a fabulous album. And it's been nominated for a Juno and Grammy Award. Rufus has also composed 2 operas and recorded 9 Shakespeare sonnets for Robert Wilson. What else can I tell you? I guess the introduction from my point of view is that Rufus is a very dear and lifelong friend who I've known since I was 10 years old. We grew up together in Montreal and we sang in a choir together. And I watched Rufus record his first album in LA. And he's also the last person that I've seen out from outside of Australia. That was in February 2020 with his gorgeous husband and daughter. And hopefully this is us coming full circle and like breaking the cycle. Thank you so much for being here, Rufus.
Thanks for having me. Greetings. Yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you so much, Talya, for reading from your incredible offering here. It's been, I have to say, it's been really wonderful to. It was great to hear you because I read the book, adored it. And then when you sent me the poems that you were reading last night, you told me which ones you were going to read. I then, went back over those, and then to hear them again now, it sort of reinvigorates my belief with poetry that it's very important to hear something 2 or 3 times, and a sign of a really good poem is something that kind of has this reverberation. And I've got to do that with a lot of your poems. I mean, in this process. So yeah, it's I've known you for, as you said, since we were children, and you've always had a kind of deep and very, very spiritual, but also somewhat spooky relationship with the world, the universe, and the planet. And is this and this book definitely this offering definitely expresses that. Are you? I'm curious. So when were these written? Like are they at all in a chronological order, or were they done? Or did you group them because they were related to each other, or how does that work? Because it's in 3 parts, the book. Tell me.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been writing the poems for a while, so I've been writing them, I guess, since about 2016, probably.
Okay.
So over quite a stretch of time, they've come in different bursts. I guess I've had some residencies, like went to the Banff Center and did a residency
Right.
here in Margaret River, and sort of tended to write in these big bursts.
Yeah.
And then like borrowed time having a child under
Right.
the roof. So it's like, the poems kind of come in these bursts. And I just had like this tiny desk in my bedroom, really, in the cottage we were living in. And whenever I could, I would write. But I guess I feel like the actual groupings in the book it was kind of a challenge, actually, to group them.
Yeah.
Because they came out over time, and it was like when they all came together, it was really a bit of a challenge. And that was something I worked with a lot with the editor that I worked with, Sandra.
Yeah.
And trying to find some kind of build and flow. And I guess there's a section at the end that really are kind of pandemic poems that came out.
Yeah.
And also, like, as I shaped the book, I kind of realized there were some key anchor poems missing. So I had to kind of go back really not that long ago and write, like, the first one, the Snow Queen one, was one of the poems I wrote. Like, there were things they needed to get written, trying to, and to make the book have, that
Is it
solidity
possible?
that it needed to
Yeah.
truly hold together. But
Right.
I mean, it's definitely a bit of an intuitive shaping. Like each section is named after a kind of piece of vocabulary from like ice. Yeah, it's all like from the ice sheets. It was kind of
Right,
like
right,
a,
right,
but
right.
it might.
But what's good, what's interesting about it though is that I mean I know also I mean when I first met you, really you were mostly in the theater. I mean you still are in the theater, but you were doing a lot of acting and your mother's an actress and stuff. So you were really rooted in that world, and it for me it very much. It's funny because my new album Unfollow the Rules is also in 3 sections, and I did. And I do feel like this book is sort of a 3-act affair where, on one hand, there's this kind of struggle between your kind of Cassandra-like uh, tendencies, where you really have these visions and these kind of apocalyptic moments, and then also with your very kind of, I wouldn't say normal or anything, but your very usual kind of just struggles as a mother, as a parent, and dealing with the reality of this of just living in this very challenging world at the moment with a child, and then there's this comedy era. I like to call you, you're kind of like you're the Carol Burnett of Cassandras. So because you like to bring in comic elements too, or a bit of an edge. So it's and I do feel like by the end it's sort of like they're all communicating with each other. I mean, this is probably my observation, but it is, I see it as like a little play, 3-act kind of affair. So
Yeah, I guess there's definitely some absurdity that gets in there. That's the
yeah,
sense of humor, and I feel like it
yeah,
needed that. It needed the
yeah,
levity along with the reality. I feel like for me, it was a book that was it was me trying to get to feeling, and
yeah,
I do. It's true. Like I think there's this part of me that can see into the future and that sees things that are a bit dark, and
yeah.
but then that gets balanced out with this other side that is hopeful, I guess. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I've been
I think it's
reading.
hopeful, and it also, I mean, and you do touch on this, and this is actually a good question for you. I mean, you touch on your family's history, with the war, with this Second World War, and like what your grandparents and your parents kind of went through, or your father went through. Could I mean, I don't know how much you want to get into that, but I do feel like I do know that for Jewish people, I mean, you have to be in a sense of humor is kind of what it takes in order to survive in a very brutal world historically. Am I correct in
Yeah,
sort
I
of
think
touching on that?
I think there's dark humor and that Eastern European sensibility, it's
Yeah,
just, it's like, and it is a survival instinct, I think, in some ways
yeah,
to see that kind of levity in the darkness, or have yeah, I think the dark sense of humor must be coming in from like the Jewish and Holocaust surviving side. And,
yeah,
the impossibility of having hope in the face of hopelessness is something that maybe I've got some history in, or at
yeah,
least,
yeah.
having that proximity to that kind of darkness. And I guess, yeah, I've been wrestling a lot with this idea of hope and like how to balance it out with action.
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult question. No, it's very interesting because today I had a meeting and I realized that in a lot of ways, oh, here comes my dog. I realized in a lot of ways that that when you think about the Second World War, or the wars, First and the Second World War, in comparison to what we're going through now,
Yeah.
it's almost like this mirror image where, nobody believed that the world would collapse at that point, and in the turn of the 20th century, and it did. And like no, it was just kind of, I wouldn't say it took people by surprise, but it was just this unfathomable thing. But now in our stage, with this environmental crisis on the horizon, we know the world is going to collapse, and we're kind of faced with this calamity. And so I think it is probably important that you have, you know, we have to pool all of our resources, whether it's comedy, whether it's hope, whether it's, you know, mysticism. And you really do that in your poems a lot, like you're using all of your various all of your influences to go up against this very formidable problem. So
Yeah, it's a hard one to like. I feel like it was one of those things where it's hard to even like, we do know that we're facing our demise and yet we can't register it. I feel like that is one of the biggest things that I was confronting in writing it was, do I really feel it? I know it, but do I really feel it? And trying to get back into feeling that idea of like Iceland is melting and so are you, was that the heart needs to melt and you need to be able to open the heart to feel what we're actually doing, to feel what we're actually experiencing and doing to ourselves. It's like, and I think there's a big question for me in the book of like, who are we going to be? Are we going to be the people who destroy ourselves? Or are we going to be the people who save ourselves? And I think that tension of opposites in the book, for sure, like it's always there for me. You know, that's up for grabs. It's up for grabs right now. There's no question that it may not turn out like
but I think the other thing too, though, in relating to that, is that what I also like about the poems is that, you know, I know you've lived all over the world. You know, you were brought up in Montreal. You know, lived in I remember you lived in LA for a while, you know, when you were at Mount Baldy and stuff, and then, you know, in Greece and stuff. But there's no general kind of geographic. I see all the little spots. I can relate to them, but it's not like you're coming from, you know, this one area talking about a one situation. But I will say, which I think we share, in that I live in California and you live in Australia, is that both of us are living in these two places. We are so affected by climate change. We are really on the front lines with fires, really, and what has been going on over the last, you know, 3 or 4 years. Where that sort of, for me, kind of that for me gives what I do, and maybe what you do too, like a sense of urgency, because it's been around us for a long time, and whether you're in Australia or California. And do you find that at all? Do you find just being
there is more of a sense of immediacy, for sure, when you're witnessing that kind of destruction firsthand. And I mean, we've moved to the Perth Hills where like fire is a reality, and that's something that's so. And I think there's this part of my brain that will go, but it's not going to happen. And it's like, it's this very strange part of the human brain that I think it's sort of almost like a protection, like a mechanism that we have to try to sort of protect ourselves. And but I think we need to figure out, like, I think our survival instincts need to override that kind of denialism into like a better.
Well, we can't really deny it anymore. I'm just saying, I guess in a lot of ways, and I've always found this about living in California in this era, is that essentially you know, having to face the reality of what's going on environmentally is, hey guys, I'm just doing a thing here. I'm on a live thing. You gotta be quiet. Shh. Sorry. Anyways. Hi, sorry. We're in front of
it real. You're keeping it real.
Anyways, but just living here and stuff in California and all of that, and in Australia specifically, we have to face it, and therefore we have to do something about it. Like we have to turn it into something positive. So I think that's probably true. Are you still there? Or have I lost? Okay. Am I around? Okay, well, I'm still around. Right when my family was introduced.
We just noticed that. Thank you, Rufus, for flagging that. I think we've
oh wait, she's coming
maybe
back.
she's coming
back. Okay, there you are. There you are. I did, you know, I
haven't had internet problems until like I think
Of
it's
course,
because
that's
it's,
that's the way it is. But I just want to, in shifting away from the end of the world for a
yeah.
moment and talking about your beautiful poetry, I did want to say that one thing I really adored is your use of space, and I mean literal space, and how you often communicate a variety of ideas through nothing, through spaces, and through whether you cut a sentence at an odd moment and then take it up, in the next verse or something, or the next stanza. But I was really very impressed by the language that you have developed there, whether it's a sense of like disconnect, or then a sense of longing, or a sense of you know also there was one where I really felt like you were kind of you could see it was just your mind visualizing something, and then you could go on with the poem. Like that seems like a real something you really, an architecture that you like to utilize. Am I right in that, with the
Yeah,
spaces?
it's true. I mean, I tried to kind of inhabit these spaces and these places that almost seemed impossible to inhabit, like
Yeah,
geology and like what you said about it not being anchored in one place. It's true. It's like I was trying to inhabit like geography and geology in a much more epic way, and a minute and
yeah,
the large, and sort of like feel my way into those places and spaces that are almost impossible to inhabit
yeah,
as an individual.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's nice that you felt that you picked up on
No,
that,
I
because
mean,
it,
I felt that, and also, but also I feel like literally with how the poem is written, where you
yeah.
have a moment, and it becomes its own language. I guess I always think about, and I don't know who said it, but I think it might have been Mozart, but I'm not sure. But he said, the most important thing in music is silence,
Mm.
and there are these silences in your poems where you really I don't know. You're very adept at capturing the kind of rhythm, I guess, the rhythm, and it's and so forth of the human mind, which is on many tracks at the same time, trying to figure everything out. And are you? So I think I saw a message that we may be opening it up to some other questions. Am I correct in that? Someone was saying that before, but hi, Robin. But I don't know how to get my own messages. Anyways, well, I'll just continue talking then. Are you, I'm sorry, I'm really bad. I'm usually the one being interviewed, so I'm like pretty bad at this.
And
But
I put you on the spot and
oh,
reversed
I
it.
wanted to know, there was one thing. I wanted to know who Mary Anning is. You
Oh,
mentioned in a
she was
poem.
a scientist. Well, she, it was she actually,
Quoted in the poem at one point.
yeah, there's a whole poem about her, that she kind of she wasn't very recognized for what she did until a bit later. And like, it sort of took these male scientists to like affirm her. She lived in England, where there was like a very rich kind of fossils in the cliffs. And she would go fossiling, like she would like dig for fossils. And some people say that like she sells seashells by the seashore, like that very known children's rhyme was kind of about her.
Oh,
And
okay.
that
Wow.
she would yeah, apparently she made these incredible discoveries
Okay.
about like scientific discoveries about fossils and about time, and these were things that were kind of discounting the framework that we had for time in terms of a creationist kind of framework. So it was controversial, and also that she was a woman was controversial. And yeah, I think that's one of the only poems that kind of
Yeah.
brings in something that's quite outside myself, that's got a more historical
Yeah,
reference. But
I like that one. Okay, we do have some questions. I have a direct question here. Um, we currently occupy a turning point in history. As we move towards a permanent shift in global temperatures, how does the tension between past and future occupy or animate your poems?
yeah, I think there is this constant, I mean, I talked about it a little bit, where we're trying to like, I think we're this pendulum is swinging between, who we've been and who we're becoming and who we're going to be, and I feel like we are on a turning point and tipping point, like even with this climate summit that just feels so like it's going nowhere. It's sort of like humanity is kind of asserting itself right now. And I think even looking at those poems from the Holocaust and like looking at the past and looking to the future, it's like this feeling of also this sense of time of like having this long view.
Yeah.
Maybe even much more than just hundreds of years, but actually millions of years, and like what this all means in the span of time. I feel like that was a big part of what was happening in these poems, was how do we take in the expansiveness of time and what's happened to us and where we're going. It's very hard, I think, for the human brain to kind of think on large scale time. But even if we're in the here and now and thinking about the choices we're making right now and how we're going to live into the future, it's a very tricky one, because it's like, in some ways, all we can do is like go into the garden and plant something and weed and make the most of every moment we have on this earth and connect to the land that we're on and be very, very present. And in a way, I think there's a healing in that can hopefully bring us into what the future needs to be. But yeah, I do feel like, for me, that's what I'm doing, is like planting a garden. I don't know what else to do. There's an activism that is greater than that, of course, but as an individual, it can be very hard to live in these kind of expansive timeframes. And in a way, I feel like this climate emergency is asking that of us. It's asking us to take in, the present and past and future all at once and kind of reckon with it.
Right.
And make better choices, even though like when governments are, it's very tricky when governments are the ones that are at the helm and not making those choices. And not thinking about, there is no economy if there's no planet.
Yeah, no, I think that it's everybody's the jig is up, as they say. I think whether Glasgow was successful or not is almost like immaterial, because there's no kind of question anymore about what's occurring, and so people have to just do whatever they can do. So there's no other way to do it. Let's see. The people here want me to also tell our listeners or our viewers that to please submit questions in the Q&A. Oh, there you are, the Q&A function. I'm talking while now you're back. You're back. Okay. Can you hear me, Talya? Okay, it's Rufus. There you are, you're back. I know this is just like.
I know, because the Perth Hills are notorious. Someone wrote in the chat.
Okay. Well, here's another
questions.
Here's another question. The pandemic has been critical crystallization, and yet also a distraction from the climate crisis. How can we direct attention at a time that at the same time make the connection between the destruction of the planet and these worldwide outbreaks? So folks, wake up. Is this a missed or a golden opportunity / turning point? Well, it's a frozen it's a frozen box. Hello world. I can answer that question. I think it's actually I think it's a great opportunity, and whether it's COVID or Black Lives Matter or this sort of rising of fascism again. These are all the situations that we have to deal with. And there's no kind of sugarcoating the situation. And I will, just while we wait for for her to come back, we can have a little bit of my dog, just to give you a bit of nature's poetry. This is Siegfried, who is joining me here. We're waiting for Talya, who wrote this wonderful poetry book. And she will return. Here, this is like the showbiz in me. Let the dog out.
Like, it's live, it's Zoom.
Live TV on Zoom.
Well, hopefully we'll get Talya back again. So far, you know, there's
There we go. There we go.
There we go. She's back.
She's back. Our dog Siegfried was actually, I did a little show and tell with the dog. So I basically, you know, nature saved the day. Once again.
Sorry, my internet's not usually this bad. It's like they're actually tree trim. They're doing this major tree trim outside my window, and I think that it's interfering with the.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm back.
I did want to also say, Talya, that I had a lovely moment this morning when I was reading your poems that I knew I had to sort of, you know, finish up a couple before, you know, the interview, and I had our daughter Viva was being really, she was just being a kid in the morning before school, and I was like, I have to read a couple of poems to finish. I was just about to finish the book, and I had to like read about 3 or 4, and I had this one moment where I was like, what a gift, you know, to actually go and read a poem, you know, in the midst of life's, you know, hullabaloo, and how fantastic that is. And I think as a poet, like maybe here's just to talk about being a poet in general. Are you? Yes, I hope that you're aware of that, how much joy you bring to people in like an instant, and yeah, tell me, I mean, are you aware of that, or?
Well, it's nice to hear. Sometimes poetry feels like a kind of lost art that's a bit disregarded in this world that we live in, that is so busy and fast-paced and screen-based, and like, it's great to hear that. I think that poets need to hear that a lot. Yeah, I think they do. I think they need to remember that. That also this world needs this. It needs this kind of healing, which is coming from a place that slows you down. And sort of forces you to listen and turn more inwardly and just stop.
Which is so important.
Yeah, we don't make a lot of room, I think, for that.
Yeah. We have another question here. Hello, this is from Madrid. Hello, Talya and Rufus from Madrid. In what way is nature an inspiration to you as artists? Thank you so much. Well, I mean, look, what is how? I mean, is nature your main inspiration? Would you say?
Is nature my main inspiration? For this particular book, or in general? Is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think for this book, it's definitely in the forefront. But would you? What is your main inspiration?
Well,
If you had to pick one as your main, maybe it's impossible to do that, but I'm just curious. If the house of inspiration was burning down, what child would you save?
Okay. Oh gosh, wow. That's a hard one. I mean, obviously the natural world is huge. This one, like, it's without the natural world, there is none of these poems exist. But wow, I mean, so much, it's really weird, but a lot of these poems came out of like reading the news as well. That's a really weird inspiration, but I felt like being saturated in the news and our take on the natural world was fascinating to me. Like the lens that we were putting on the natural world, I found that just like to reckon with and wrestle with, like, you know, the permafrost melting in Siberia and what it's yielding, like these treasures, and it's like this almost celebration of these amazing treasures, and it's like, actually it's a horror, you know, like, and I felt like that was really interesting to me, this tension again of the natural world and the kind of what was newsworthy. And yeah, like the raining plastics in the Rockies, and there was just a lot of that. I mean, obviously it's coming from different places. Like obviously being immersed in nature was a huge part of it. But I feel like, yeah, I got a lot out of just the tension of like the natural world and what we're placing on it from like this human perspective.
Right.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
I didn't answer the pandemic question. I got totally cut off, so I don't know.
What would be your answer? Did you find the pandemic a good thing or a bad thing in terms, or inspiring or non-inspiring, or what?
In terms of the climate emergency and how we're dealing with it?
How do you
I
think
feel like in some ways, I feel like they're directly related, because it's sort of, I do think that our destruction, and a lot of scientists believe that a lot of our destruction of nature is, directly related to the release of these viruses. So I think there's a direct connection.
Yeah.
I think that slowing ourselves down, again, that whole thing of listening and being forced to stay put and to be on the land we're on rather than running around and moving around. There's obviously the carbon footprint element, which I'm guilty of completely, living in Australia and having a lot of most of the people I love in Canada or North America and Europe. And it's sort of, stopping us from doing that has been an amazing thing. I think some of the poems talk about, like the animals coming back and sort of wandering the streets and wondering what happened to the humans. And, that kind of realizing that when you press pause on the humanity, there's some pretty great things out there. Like if you just pause us for a bit, and like what goes on without us is pretty fabulous, like the healing. Some people said that, some governments were kind of sneaking in like some deforestation, like climate, stuff that was bad, like that because we weren't paying attention. But I mean, there's a whole, I do think that directly, I feel like it's been a positive in some ways. I mean, if you can say that, there's nothing positive about losing all kinds of lives, but the positive of the suspension of time and actually having to also thrown back on ourselves, thrown back on feelings about feeling. And I think the pandemic has forced us to feel, forced us to
and to focus.
Really come into focus with who we are,
Yeah. I'm going to ask one other question here. Is a good question. As artists, in addition to making art for art's sake, do you feel a sense of obligation or inspiration to become a voice for social change? Yeah. How are you feeling that need now to be more proactive with your poetry, like be more out there trying to?
Well, I mean, I guess I feel like the poems themselves are speaking towards a kind of activism by inspiring people to, I would hope that the intent was never for them to be kind of activist poems, but I think that the nature of this situation is that if those poems wake you up to the reality, then more people are likely to take action. I would hope that if you can actually sit in what's happening, then that can lead to a kind of activism. If I personally would then, I mean, I don't know I don't think that look, if I had the opportunity to read these poems in context that would have impact in terms of, events or things that would help, absolutely. And my own choices and the way I live my life all the time, of course, I'm always thinking about it. But in terms of the actual, I think the poems themselves are the act of activism.
Yeah. No, it's true. I just got to keep putting out the good stuff. So I've been saying, would you like to read us some other poem now?
Well, I just was going to read like the one long poem from the book called The Whale Had Swallowed Plastic.
That'd be great. Wonderful.
Okay. The sperm whale downed a car, a house, a tree, my grief, the regret of a long gray thief, the wonder of a newborn child, the ravishing of a world gone wild, the surfing of a web gone wrong, the final phrases of a song, the long gray smile on the face of a rare armadillo, the end of the oldest thing beginning, 7 sperm whales washed up on a shore, another thing to remember us for. I'm a kid with a chart, size, color, length. I know all the names of all the whales, but have no map of the sea dark, deep dark sea, the fathoms deep, impossible heart. How big is a whale heart before it falls apart? How big is a whale's heart? I want to Google it, but have no internet. The world is coming apart. Too many drawn out video chats and wires deep under the sea. Connectivity. We're also connected. We're strangling, tangling. All the whales are ganging up, sovereigns of the sea, singing whale songs, gulping our grit to the great beyond, to the great void. Expansive shit. This is it. Over and out. The rulers of the sea swallowing plastic by the mouthful, by the gutful of PCP, BPA free. I'm eating a dish of a coelacanth fish with jelly, and I don't know which ocean it was fished from, or with what bait, or if it is too late to eat at all, at all, at all, at all. Hysterical, we fall. A piece of a car hood and something from last year's stash of toys, and made in China etched across the front, across your insides. I want to tell you about how the inside is broken, how we want to sedate, 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 to surf the net and ride the waves and lose the feeling of death and dying on the latest Windows interface, on the face of the moon. There are so many seas, many fathoms deep, and whales tell tales of what it is to keep the secrets of the unknown depths of flashlight fish and googly-eyed monsters so pocked and twisted no one can name the species or the game. What it is to know the ancient secrets of the deep and then swallow bottle caps and plastic twist ties and grocery bags and sweet, sweet lies, the lies that lie inside our hearts that we dare not shine a lantern fish on. To know the unanswerable language of the seas and to swallow glad wrap and Happy Meal cups and think you are all filled up with debris. When you know riddles of the deep, it is impossible to fathom that above there is a darker truth brewing. Is it possible to be wise and swallow all our society's demise, hook, line, and sinker? What do we care what becomes of you, strange, silent giants? What do we care what becomes of you? There are houses to buy and deals to close and unknowable mysteries to dispose and rubbish to throw into the bins and prayers to take away our sins, only we've forgotten how to confess. Inside is an ocean. Salt water is what I am. Organs I never called upon until I touched dry land. Breath we breathe in skies we dream while oceans seep into the seas, where lakes dry into algae swamps, where whales consume our impulse buying desires, our unspoken church spires, our globes of guttural unscreamed screams, our obsession to look at screens, at screens, at screens. They contain our past, our future. These unknown creatures roam the deep. They sing and sweep and sing and sweep, consuming all we could not keep, forgetting what we would not weep. And then the time we had to spend on earth did creep unto its end. These unknown creatures roam the deep. They sing and sweep and sing and sweep. Care. Listen. My baritone throne, my soprano glisten of vocal cords unused, abused. I had to speak for the fathomless depths and the truth they leak, from the poisonous seeping, truth they keep, the neighborhood creep, the slowing leap into the void, the dark deep. You say, shut up. You make no fucking sense. Stupid prophet, stupid prophet. La, 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 la. Close my ears to you. I close my eyes to you. I close my heart to you. not even like you. I'm a responsible adult. I make a living. Get your priorities straight. Pay your credit card debts. Have you ever seen a whale up close, eye to eye? Thanks.
Sorry, one second, getting my screen back. I love that last line is so powerful, incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me, Rufus. It's been great to see you, even virtually.
Yeah.
And great to have a chat. And
Yeah.
It's good to birth the book into the world, even though you know, it feels odd virtually, but it's also kind of extraordinary that people from all over the world, you know, are here together. So I guess that's the gift of it.
It's the gift. Well, thank you. Congratulations, Talya. And I can't wait to see you in the flesh, and sending love to your family and from mine.
Yeah, love right back.
Okay. Great.
Well,
we've come out to be the bad guys who have to start to wind down the event. Talya, you don't have to leave.
You don't have to go away.
Wanna turn your camera back on, or maybe we've lost her. Who knows?
You want me to come back? I'm back.
Yeah. Don't go anywhere yet.
We really came on too strong at the beginning when we were like in praise of technology, and but you know, it's come through, and it has been a wonderful event, regardless of any kind of funny little techie glitches. It's just been a wonderful evening, and such a fantastic conversation with you and Rufus, and such wonderful questions from the audience. So thank you so much. But we have a few parting words, but before we say that, anything else, we just wanted to hand it back over to you, Talya, in case there are any parting words that you yourself would like to share.
Oh, just thank you for making this book happen, and I can't wait to share it in person and come to Canada again and read in actual live venues. I feel like that would be such a beautiful and extraordinary thing to be able to do. But just thank you again for believing in it and making it, you know, real.
Oh, that's been our great pleasure. And we would like to thank you too for trusting us with your fierce and stunning work. It is, like, honestly, it's our sincere, honest honor to be the publisher of Iceland is Melting and So Are You. And we're excited for readers everywhere to meet this incredible poetry collection.
Yes.
Want to say a huge thank you to Rufus Wainwright for joining us tonight to engage you in conversation. That was such a thoughtful discussion with Talya. Thank you so much, Rufus. And we have a few thank yous to our team that have been hiding in the background, including Alex Spears, who's been managing the tech for us tonight. Thanks, Alex, very much for your help. And thank you as well to Rachel Geary, who's our publishing intern extraordinaire, and she's been managing what we call the Zoom backstage tonight. And of course, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight to celebrate with Talya the release of her new book. It's been such a lovely evening, and we're so glad that you could join us. And
it's been really wonderful to see in the chat, just from far and wide, people have joined us. And Talya, you'll be glad to know that we'll capture tonight's chat and send you a record, because I'm sure you haven't had a chance to read it as you've been going along through the evening, but you'll see all the lovely messages of support and love that people have been sending throughout the night. So Talya, do you have any other final words just before we say goodbye and Zoom waves all around?
Oh, I think, you know, the thing that comes to me is that I've been listening to this audiobook that Jane Goodall in Conversation. It's called The Book of Hope. And it's just such an extraordinary book. And I feel like it's so important that we Yeah, that we take on that message of the right kind of hope, which is action and a survival instinct, which is about humanity being able to save itself. And I wouldn't want to leave people with a feeling of just heaviness. I feel like there's the heavy reality and taking that in properly. And then there's what we're going to do about it, and still living with hope, which is
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Thank you for that. That was
It's
lovely.
a good way to end
Yeah.
end our evening tonight.
So we'll just make one final reminder to anyone who hasn't already gotten a copy of Talya's really, really important, timely, and urgent poetry collection. It is available to order directly from us, from our website. The link has been dropped into the chat throughout the evening. Also, of course, to order from your local independent bookseller. And someone did ask earlier if we ship overseas. We do. We can ship anywhere in the world. So thank you one and all for joining us. Thank you, Talya. Thank you, Rufus. Thank you, everyone. We wish everyone a great rest of the evening, or as in Talya's case, a great rest of the day. And we wish everyone to please be well and stay safe. And here's to when we can, in fact, join together again in real life. Thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take good
Bye.
care.
Zoom wave.
Bye-bye.